The Threshold of Thought, Humanity's Sacred Ascent, from Atlantis to the Age of the Soul. Episode 1, The Root Race Transmissions. Welcome, family of seekers, to another transmission from Ancient the Architect TV. Today, we travel across the veils of forgotten memory, not just to understand our origins, but to remember the moment when humanity took its first conscious breath of thought. This is the story of a transition, a crossing, from the fourth root race, the Atlanteans, to the fifth, the one we now live within, the race of mind. But beneath this surface lies a metaphysical revelation, not about evolution in flesh, but evolution in soul. So let us walk together through this ancient corridor of fire and ether, where the gods once whispered and men began to awaken. In the twilight of Atlantis, humanity lived not as we do now, for the Atlanteans were beings of deep inner sensing. Creatures moved more by images and impulses than reason. They did not think in linear form. They acted not from internal will, but by being permeated by higher beings, gods who moved them from without like sacred currents of divine command. They could not yet say, "This is my thought." Their actions were not yet authored from within. Rather, they lived in the glow of messengers, spiritual leaders whose light reached across the veil from higher realms, teaching, guiding, ruling, but never forcing. These messengers of the gods were not ordinary men. They walked the earth in human form, yet their essence belonged to the celestial spheres. They were dual in nature, gods wrapped in flesh, guiding humanity as a parent would guide a sleeping child. And so Atlantis flourished, but not from the creative will of man, rather from obedience to that which flowed down from above. But then, a great change stirred in the cosmic tides. The power of thought, once dormant, began to glow in the hearts of a few. A spark, small yet mighty, began to rise. And with it came a burden never before known: responsibility. The fifth root race, the one we now live within, was born not just through bodies, but through the awakening of independent inner will. No longer guided solely by divine messengers, man was being trained to guide himself. This was the task of the Manu, a spiritual architect of races, who gathered a small group of Atlanteans, those who had begun to hear their own thoughts and think not just with instinct, but with discernment. He withdrew with them to a sacred land, hidden, protected, in what is now known as Central Asia. There, in silence and preparation, he planted the seed of the new humanity. From this seed would grow the fifth root race, a race whose duty was to bring thought to perfection. But evolution is never immediate, and not all were ready. The rest of humanity, still dulled by dependence on outer commands, remained scattered, blessed with instinct, but blind to reason. As thought awakened, so too did choice. Man could now choose to use knowledge for his own ends, to dominate, to manipulate, to serve ego, or he could direct it toward the divine, aligning his new power with the invisible laws that govern the cosmos. This was a test. For with self-consciousness comes the risk of self-interest. Fire, once unnecessary, was now essential. Man had lost his innate connection to the life force and began using tools to shape his world. Tools that would soon evolve into machines, technologies, empires. And still, the choice remained: use thought for service or for self. The Manu had not only trained his group in intellect, but in soul force, the inner fire that remembers its source. From this moment on, a new path was forged. The divine would no longer command from above, but whisper through inner experience. Thus rose the mystery temples, sacred centers hidden from the masses, where chosen initiates were led beyond the veil. There, they were taught not with words, but through experience of spirit, led to recognize the invisible beings guiding the evolution of Earth from behind the curtains of matter. In those temples, one truth was spoken again and again. Obey the laws of the God ye cannot behold. Hearken to one whose image ye cannot imagine. Man was no longer to worship form, but to awaken to formless wisdom. The law, thou shalt make no graven image, was not mere commandment. It was the echo of this great turning point in human evolution. The fifth root race was to be a race of the invisible temple, a people who think, choose, and rise not by outer vision, but inner light. The divine messengers who once ruled visibly, with power and aura, began to step back. Their work had been to prepare humanity for freedom. Now, human initiates were to carry the torch. These were not just philosophers or priests, but men whose inner faculties had been awakened, who could commune with spirit, yet walk among the people. They were the new bridge, mediators between heaven and earth, who govern not by decree, but by example, living temples of wisdom in motion. This then was the true beginning of the priest-kings, those remembered in myth as demigods, sages, and culture bringers. Not gods, but men who became worthy to lead. But the Manu's work was not over. He led his people not to immediate enlightenment, but to a path. The education of the fifth root race was to be gradual. It was not enough to awaken thought. Thought had to be purified, redeemed, aligned. Even now, in our time, this work continues. Most of humanity still lives in a blend of subconscious impulse and dim conscious thought. We react, we drift, we forget. But hidden among us are the descendants of that sacred band, souls whose mission is to embody wisdom, who carry within their blood the spiritual echo of the Manu's instruction. And so, we await the moment when a new human initiate will arise, one who does not command by force, but awakens the hearts of men to follow freely. That moment, when man once again recognizes the divine order not by compulsion, but by choice, will signal the final ripening of the fifth root race. We are the children of that turning, and the wheel is turning still. Atlantis taught us to listen. The fifth root race teaches us to choose. But something older still waits beneath the waves of time. Something ancient, primal, crystalline, Lemuria. And before even that, Hyperborea. In our next transmission, we will descend into the Lemurian dream, where man was closer to star than soil, and trace the forgotten path that prepared the very womb of Atlantis itself. Until then, remember, the journey of man is the unfolding of the God within, and your breath is part of that sacred unfolding. Stay radiant, stay remembering. This is Ancient the Architect TV, and this has been the Root Race transmission.